I'm Nana van Tilburg for Bears News. South Africans are firing up their braais, stacking their fridges and getting ready for the World Rugby Cup in France. On social media, we've been fed a constant diet of the Springboks as they get ready to take on the world's rugby titans. And there's nothing more heartwarming than seeing Siya Kolisi and his boys in prime form. Nelson Mandela saw sport, and especially rugby, as a way to bring South Africans together in 1994. The moment has been immortalized in books and in the movie Invictus. And again, we are pinning our hopes not only on a rugby win for the Boks, but that it will also lift the gloom of a troubled country. To dive into the psychology of why sport has this ability to unite us and make us feel good about being South Africans, I have Dr. Greyling Viljoen, a sports psychologist from Pretoria, in the business studio. He's also a former Springbok canoeist, and he won the Boks River Marathon. Hi, Dr. Greyling, so lovely to speak to you.
Hello, Linda. Wonderful to speak to you.
So why does it make us feel so good, and why does it manage to really lift South African spirits? It's been doing it for a while, and we are definitely hoping for it to happen again.
Well, yes, there are quite a few reasons why we get this good feeling about sport in general, but then I can also talk from a South African perspective why we get this particular warm feeling when Siya leads the men onto the field. I think first of all, it does give us a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. We seldom watch sport individually. We always say we're going to watch sport. We watch sport with family. So that sense of togetherness, I think, is one aspect of the emotional feeling that feeds us. And I must also just say, sometimes sport gives us moments of ecstasy, but it can also be times of agony. It depends on what's happening on the scoreboard. But it does give us this very strong feeling. There's another aspect to the emotional or the feeling that sport gives us, and I think it not only gives us a feeling, but gives us a venue for emotional expression. So to a large extent, we become anonymous in a crowd. We disappear into the crowd. And that creates then the opportunity to express emotions. So sometimes with people that are normally quite introverted, they would become wild and they can shout and scream and so on, and that's quite permissible and even encouraged. That so we can express, we do get a feeling, but we can also express the feeling. And then another very important aspect, I think, is just the escape. We have 130 kilogram men, but they play rugby, and it's that aspect of play. We work, we love, and we play, and it is as if we play with them when they play. That we escape into that world, onto the field. Yes, I think that's a very important aspect, and hopefully that will remain. That it doesn't always it mustn't become work. But from a perspective, it's the play that I think that matters. There's just one other aspect I think that's also quite important, and that is it's on a more personal level. We identify with the players, and we even find identity in them. So if we older, we become younger, we become vibrant, we can become full of energy. Or where you're young, you're a girl, you're a boy, and you watch the older players, and then you become old, and you be older, and you become stronger. So it is that identification with the players that also is part of that feeling.
How much is this for all of us harking back to that era when we were called the Rainbow Nations, when Nelson Mandela had this unifying effect that he put on a Springbok jersey?
Well, I think our generation, we have such wonderful memories of those moments. Not just when he did put on the journey in 1995, but also the inauguration, where there was that sense of really the sense of Rainbow Nation, and we had a sense of unity. And I think the current South African team does create that with people that are representative of us, as South Africans. So I think this team, sometimes I've almost think that they carry much more than the World Cup on their shoulders, and that is really representing the nation.
It looks like it, but if you look at social media and how, as I said in the intro, we're fed this constant diet, the Boks lining up for a picture and then they're wrestling kind of thing, and we all think, ooh, that's so nice and cute. How clever is the strategy of the team to do this, to roll out these moments that we can all enjoy long before and to prepare us for what is coming?
Yes, I think they are doing a particularly good job with a build up, and I like that playfulness that they bring into the build up. It is very serious business, the World Cup, but I almost get the sense that they purposefully not take it too seriously, that they do remind us that they're going to play in the World Cup, which I think is a very good thing. But that so to see them do that with each other, and also it's part of their strategy to build their own team sense of team and the psychological unity within their team is just to play with each other.
You have coached sportsmen about the weight of expectation. In other words, you practice so long for this, you build it up, you make sure that you don't get injuries. How do they manage this psychological element of a weight of expectation of a whole nation on them?
Yes, I think they will be coached with, and they do have psychological coaches that works with the team. The important thing is that you don't internalize too much of the external expectations. So, what the nation, the fans, even closer to home, family members. So the expectations should be internal. And those expectations that they set themselves should be in relation to their form. And we know that the current Springbok team is in pretty good form, collectively and individually. So their expectations are high, but their expectations are, I think, would probably be realistic based on their own form. So not external expectations, but what they can do on the field. And then, of course, it's not just psychological expectations, but the expectations are converted into action, so into tactics and into how they play the game on the field, so that it becomes tangible. And in that sense, then it wouldn't be overwhelming because it's things that they practice, and then they are expected just to go and implement a plan. It's not as if they expect more or different from themselves than what they have been doing and what they have been practicing.
Is it more difficult having won the previous one, that everybody is out there to get you? They want to topple you from that throne. Would there be a different sense of how you would coach them, what you would say to them? Because some newspapers that I've read say that South Africa is better when they are the underdogs, and this time they're not. They're the one that everybody wants to push off the podium.
Well, yes, I think it depends on who you are. Are you for the Springboks or are you playing against the Springboks? If you are a Springbok, I think then you would use it to your advantage, having won. So then you can get confidence from that we haven't just won it once, we've won it twice. And also the recent performance, you get confidence from that, and one wants to repeat what you have been doing, what they have been doing on the field. And of course, but then there will be the other side, and that's also the psychological game. Starts long before they run onto the field. So the opponents would use it and say, there would probably some joking narrative is going to come into the equation here, that they or that we, but like as you said, that they say we better when we be underdogs, but I think that will be then could even be a strategy from the opponents, you know, that they would want to create that narrative. But I don't think so. I think they gain confidence from having won previously.
So if you would advise a team like the Boks before an event like this, social media after a match can be brutal. Like, so-and-so was rubbish. Oh, goodness, he can't kick. You know, what would the advice be? Stay away from those comments. Don't read them. What is the psychological advantage or disadvantage from looking at the media and looking at social media?
Yes, I think the advantage would be that it's motivational, and I think really that the Springboks they feel that we we are behind them, we're supporting them, and they can read and they can see it. But the negative feedback and social media afterwards, I think one also can't take it too seriously. So they do have their own professional analysis of, after matches and games where they would discuss and digest and dissect a game, and then take that forward into improvements and so on. And I think that kind of feedback they do take seriously. But as a professional athlete and sportsman, one should learn also, whether you read it or not read it, is not to take it too seriously. So one has to really try and distinguish where does this come from? Yeah.
When it comes to, let's look at other sport, like in the World Athletics Championship, South Africa didn't win a single medal. How do they come back from that?
Yes, I must say that athletics performance was quite disappointing this time around. What we do know from sport is that winning or losing does not automatically motivate or demotivate. So, like, winning will motivate you, and losing will demotivate you. It can go either way. So even winning can demotivate people because they've won the gold, and now what's next? So there's nothing next, and then there's nothing more that they can do, and then they become demotivated. So it really depends on how you interpret that lose and that win. So there was some comments and press after the World Athletics that said that some athletes showed real good potential, and despite not making a finals and so on, they've really improved on their time. So I think if one can start taking things like that out of the performance, and not always measure the performance against the best in the world, but look at in terms of your own improvement, whether it was you've done a PB or close to a PB on a world stage, that could be very motivational that you got that right. But the other thing, that certain things like the like the relay team, that was where we were disqualified there. That was just. I think that's just not having trained enough. So if there's anything it's not as if they weren't good enough. I think they didn't put in enough training for that relay. Yeah.
So can we ask you finally? If we look at sports people like Djokovic, where does that absolute drive come from? Is it a certain personality trait, or do they develop it as they become more successful?
I think there's part of it that's personality. So some kids are competitive from a very early age, and others not so competitive. They maybe have the talent, like the technical skills, but they're just not that interested in beating or the other kids. So it's definitely part of it is part of personality. But somebody likes being on top of the game, and it just keeps on winning, like Djokovic and the other two, Federer and Nadal. I think it's just it's almost like it's just this. That's just what they do. They just become so used to winning and performing on a top level, and that can happen, in business or in other aspects of life, in actors and so on. So they professionally, they always give their best, and then their best is better than the rest. So the winning drives them, but I think it is just to perform at their highest level that they can do. They become used to that, and then whether they, every time that they go onto the court or the field, that's just what they do. They perform at their best level.
Well, people often ask me, when you live overseas or whatever, you South Africans are good sports people. Why is that? Is it the outdoors thing?
Well, I think it's outdoors, but I think it's also a bit in the genes. I think if you all the different cultures in South Africa, I think there's something in the genetic makeups of South Africans that's good in sport, and I think for sure the outdoors has a lot to do with it. I sometimes can't imagine living in some of the European or other colder climates, and you have to go and play outdoors, whether it's football or rugby, and but here we can, for 10 months of the year, you can play outdoors.
So Greyling Viljoen, thank you so much, and we sort of hope that we get a Bok win.
Oh, that will be wonderful. Thank you, Linda. Nice talking to you.